welcome to episode 716 of Longbox Heroes, the Lamborghini of comic book podcasts. I'm Todd, along with Joe. How are we doing today, Joe?
I'm ready to go. We got lots of stuff to talk about this week. And I have a feeling a lot of the media that we've consumed over the last week, whether it be comic books or TV shows or what have you, most of it is going to be some of the lightest fare that we've reviewed in quite some time.
Right.
And then one of them maybe isn't going to be.
Yeah. I think I'm mopping what you're spilling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do we got? I'm grabbing my notes.
Yep.
Yep, those are my notes. Okay.
Right. In news,
I was not to interrupt. I have barbecue sauce all over my notebook this past week.
Oh no! Was it the A-Team van that you got it from?
Yeah.
A-Team barbecue. You gotta love it. But what we have on the show this week: creator changes, an update to an art scandal, and an update on the latest big company imprint. And a date that I used to celebrate until it became too commercialized is changing, and award nominations. The Rob Watch makes a return, a different version of the Rob Watch. We'll see. Convention.
Is this week, Todd? I don't mean to interrupt the news roll here, but is this week the Rob Watch or is it the Rib Watch?
Oh, with your barbecue sauce, it all comes around.
No, come on.
Right.
Our writer's going to get a raise for that one.
Right. The latest edition of My Walk Down Lois Lane with our good friend Becky. And this week, we know that they're putting action in Action Comics.
Somebody's trying a little bit harder than others.
Right. What we read last week, which includes Uncle $$ Rouge and the Infinity Dime #1, and Nightwing 115. What we're looking forward to this week. Todd and Joe have issues where we reread Gail Simone's Secret Six in its entirety, and this week it is issue 9 of the volume 3 of the ongoing Secret Six. And finally, probably the longest part of the episode will be TV and movie talk, where we talk about the latest episode of The Acolyte, the season finale of Doctor Who, and the latest episode of The Boys.
Sounds like a jam-packed show, but I feel as though we can get through it a little. And again, I don't like watching the clock. It is what it is. The show is what it is. If it's an hour and a half, it's an hour 40. If it's over 2 hours, it is what it is. But
so what you're saying is it should be a short show.
Should be a short show.
Gotcha.
So it was announced this past week, literally right after we recorded the show, that Zeb Wells specifically is going to be leaving Amazing Spider-Man. And he's been on the book and again, they say that he's been on the book for almost 3 years, but with the renumberings and multiple issues a month, like he's almost going to hit like 60 issues on this run.
Wow.
Yeah. Now I know his run has been divisive. I'm an avid Amazing Spider-Man reader. I have one small little gap in my run. And, thick and thin, we've talked about it before. I was there for the Clone Sagas. I was there for the 4 identities that got spun up into slingers. But I actually enjoyed this run of Zeb Wells stuff. And, it's kind of ending pretty strong. We don't talk about it a lot on the show because typically we try to either stuff that we're like super, super strong opinions about or something that we both read. But this is kind of like culminating stuff from the Nick Spencer run, kind of revisiting that. It's the Sinister Six, but they're not going after Peter. They're going after the Living Brain. And the Living Brain is not the Living Brain anymore. It's the Walking Brain. Okay. Because he has a very important message that he needs to get out to people. And he's collecting some of the smartest ancillary characters in the Spider-Man universe and J. Jonah Jameson to help him deliver this message.
Okay.
And I feel like it definitely feels with the last couple issues that they're heading to a big redemption story arc for Ben Reilly, who is currently a villain called Chasm, who turned evil, like super evil, and they tried to really power him up during that crossover with the X-Men Inferno thing that happened 7 or 8 months ago.
News to me. I didn't even know that was going on.
Right. So again, yeah, X-Men and Spider-Man crossing over. Sign Todd up, you know?
Right.
But I've enjoyed the run. I'm a sucker for Spider-Man, especially Amazing Spider-Man. It is the title, you know, capital T there. But I'll be interested to see who takes the book over.
Yeah, and I noticed you didn't mention that Romita Jr. is leaving too, what is this, like his 7th or 8th time leaving Spider-Man?
Right, because that's the thing, he wasn't, so I only say that because he wasn't like the regular artist. Right? He would do arcs here and there, and then there'd be like a fill-in for like 3 or 4 issues, and then he'd do 6 or 7, but you're talking Spider-Man comes out 16 times a year. You know, sometimes more with like crossovers and things like that. But again, I don't know what John Romita Jr. is going to be doing. It'll be interesting to see where Zeb Wells goes. I'm not sure if I'll follow him to his next project.
Right.
But I'll definitely give it a look. I'm more interested to see who comes in next on Amazing Spider-Man.
Right, because you never know. The writer might wow me and I'll join up. But we'll see. We'll see.
Now, one thing, and again, I don't know where Zeb Wells is going, and, you know, we don't deal in rumor and innuendo here on the show, but we don't deal in rumor and innuendo on the show unless we deal in rumor and innuendo on the show.
Right.
So as we grow closer to San Diego Comic-Con and the pending announcement of the big DC Absolute Universe books, there has been rumored at least creative teams, at least writing teams that have been announced for whatever the first rollout of books is. Now, I'm still hanging my hat that we're going to see a book by the end of 2024. If we see anything, I'm starting to feel as though I might be eating my John Cena hat on this one. Because obviously it's DC. If you're going to roll out an imprint, you're going to do it with the big 3, the Trinity, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and the alleged creative teams, at least writing-wise on those, are going to be Scott Snyder on Batman, which he's been there before.
Right.
Jason Aaron on Superman. He dabbled a little bit in Superman.
Right.
And Kelly Thompson on Wonder Woman. That's I think, and again, I don't want to say the big risk for me. Kelly Thompson has had a lot of hits, but hits with B and C tier characters. And she's getting a chance possibly to write the #1 woman, pun intended, at DC Comics. Right. I definitely think she could do it, but it's going to be, it's going to have to be a big book. You know, I know Tom King is currently writing the mainline Wonder Woman book.
Sure.
And most of what I see I don't read it, so I can't judge for myself. But most of the online review, discussion, discourse, etc. of it seems to be mixed, leaning more toward nay as opposed to yay.
Right.
We're doing a vote of confidence on Tom King's whatever. But again, all of this is speculative. All of this is tentative. You know, we'll see. Any thoughts, opinions, feelings, or otherwise?
Honestly, I Jason Aaron on Superman after his Bizarro storyline, I'm all for it. Kelly Thompson, I'll give it a try because, you know, I'd like to see if she does do Wonder Woman. The only one is like Scott Snyder again on Batman. I feel like I've read all the Scott Snyder Batman I've wanted to read, if that makes any sense. I don't know like what else he has to say on it. But, you know, we'll see if it's, you know, more lower tier street level stuff. I might enjoy it. But I have a sneaking suspicion they might throw us some curveballs too. You never know what we're going to get from this, from them. There might be some from C and D tier characters just to mix things in, you know, but we'll see.
And again, you know, obviously I'll see a lot of that positioning toward whatever the Jimmy Pistol DC Cinematic Universe stuff is going to be.
Right.
You know, they just announced officially today that Lanterns, it's going to be like a crime procedural thing with Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart investigating something.
Right. It's like True Detective meets Green Lantern.
Right. It was just on the list as a concept, but just today it got announced that it's going to be part of whatever Max HBO's rollout's going to be with original programming, that it's going to be greenlit for 8 episodes, writers and everything else involved, and casting is going to start shortly. So I could certainly see, just as speculative there, because Tom King's name is attached to the show, I could see Tom King attached to a Green Lantern Absolute Universe book as well.
Right. And as you mentioned, too, like all this stuff will be more pronounced like after or during San Diego Comic-Con. I just looked, and it's like literally as we record 1 month to San Diego Comic-Con.
Right.
So we'll have news soon.
Yeah, we're going to have, like I said, right now, Ultimate Absolute Universe DC is rumor and innuendo, but again, it's something I'm interested in.
Right.
Yeah. I'm with you on the Scott Snyder one. I know you had said, I think we've read all that we have that Scott Snyder has to say about Batman. I'm in agreement with you there. That is one where I'm going to read the solicitation. I'm going to look to see who the artist is. I'm going to go listen to or read the Scott Snyder interviews about Batman. I want him to sell me on it.
Yeah, because I think we could agree, and this is no knock on Scott Snyder, but like to me, Scott literally peaked on his first Batman story with Black Mirror.
Yeah.
I honestly think I've liked a lot of like the Court of Owls I liked, but like it's just weird when you're like the best thing he ever did was what he started with, and then Batman went on and on and on, and I was like, and it, as I always say, it got further and further away from what Black Mirror was. So, like I said, I'd like to see him do some more down to earth stuff like Black Mirror. If he said, if he literally came out in an interview and said, I'm shifting more towards, instead of my dark metal or my metal books or Dark Knight books, I'm going more towards Black Mirror, I'm like, here's my money and stop talking.
Yeah. If he just came out and said, it's not technically a sequel to Black Mirror, but right. I'd be like, all right, here you go. You got me.
It's a spiritual like cousin to Dark Mirror.
Right. So speaking of DC, we talked about it last week. There was a controversy, some name calling, some finger pointing in regards to the September DC solicitation, specifically variant covers by an artist, Francesco Mattina. I'm not going to rehash the whole thing. Long story short, accused of swiping other artists, accused of using AI art, accused of being both. He had variant covers on the big 3 at DC, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman this month. And we had speculated that where there's smoke, there's fire, those covers are probably going to get pulled. And to no one's surprise, those covers were pulled.
And here's my really long reaction to that. Good.
Yeah.
If he's using AI, doing that kind of stuff, like you have to take those away. And there's not much more that I'm going to say about it. You know what I mean?
Right. The only other thing I'll say is, obviously there's a comic book podcast. This is not a role-playing D&D podcast, but another controversy in the world of D&D, role-playing, Magic the Gathering, etc. came out this week as well, right, in regards to accusations of AI art. And it's one of those things where it's somebody who is a regular D&D artist. Somebody just came out and said it, and then enough people piled on where the person then had to go and like post all of their sketches and their video and their process and everything else to kind of satiate the mob.
Right.
But it still was enough out there that the storyline isn't so-and-so artist does this piece for the new Dungeon Manual cover. It's so-and-so is accused of doing AI art for this.
Right.
Yeah. And again, I always say, folks, don't just read the headlines. We live in our little world here with comic book stuff, news, but that goes with everything. Don't just read the headlines, folks.
I agree.
So let's get into some local retailer stuff, of course. I know Todd jokingly had said they added Diamond Distributors, added a third, let's celebrate our local shops day. The original one, of course, was Free Comic Book Day. Mm-hmm. Then they added Halloween Comic Fest. Then they added local it was local comic shop day, and it was always like the week of Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
It was originally like the Friday of, it was like Black Friday.
Right.
But then it kind of gets mixed in with like, then there's Cyber Monday, and then there's small business, whatever, that gets lumped into all of that. And they kind of shifted that day around a bunch. And then this year they finally decided, okay, this year we're going to stay away from November altogether. And now it's September.
Right.
But now, because I know if I remember, last year they had canceled Halloween Comic Fest.
Was it last year?
I think it was last year that they canceled Halloween Comic Fest. Now that local comic shop day is the end of September, Halloween Comic Fest would be the end of October, around Halloween, of course, having the two things kind of piggybacking on top of each other. Right. I wonder how that's going to go with, exclusives and things like that. But I will say, I like that the distributors are trying hard not to let the retailers, the brick and mortar folks, get lost in the shuffle.
Right. I don't think it'll be as bad because it's not bumping up to Halloween, the Halloween one. Yeah. And that'll probably be like lesser, cheaper, thinner, free giveaways that the shop can buy, the super discounted prices for themselves. Right. What they do in September would be more for your like older customers. If they're like two different audiences is the best way I could put it, if that makes any sense.
That is true. That is true.
The Halloween one is geared definitely more towards kids. So put a few high ticket exclusive items out and you'll be good,
Yeah.
For the September one.
And I'm just looking at the September order sheet for Diamond. Mm-hmm. And they don't, usually that stuff is like right at the beginning of the catalog, and it's not in there,
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to take this moment as a public service announcement and a bit of a gripe.
Oh, good thing you're not playing any bumpers right now, but go ahead.
I could.
You could, yes.
That's not dirty, is it? No.
No, it's not. I know that for a fact.
That's what this show is now. I got to wait for it to load. I didn't have it loaded in the soundboard.
All heat, no heaters.
All right. You got to hear that, I think, maybe for the first time? Yes, I did.
And that's what we are now. We're a sound clip show.
Yes. I hate, and it's been, we're on month 3 of this, and obviously they did it, and they're never going to go back to it. But Dark Horse, like the September solicitations are out this week, Todd.
Right.
Except for Dark Horse, it's their October solicitations. They're a month ahead of everybody else.
Wow, well, that's so they can get the jump on everybody.
I guess, but then now that messes up my spreadsheet because, and again, I know a lot of times like DC will have like, oh, here's the September solicitations and we'll give you a couple books for October too, right? And Marvel will be like, hey, here's the September solicitations and the first 2 weeks of October. Where Dark Horse is at the point where it's just like, everybody else is doing September, we're doing October. Last month everybody did October or August, it don't matter. Our September is already in the books. So they had just slowly kind of gradually moved all their books in the Diamond catalog ahead of everyone else, and I hate it.
I do too. I think this is the thinking that made Linus create the Great Pumpkin, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Because Charles M. Schultz said wow, this is a tangent. Charles M. Schultz said the Great Pumpkin came about by them, like, they would do whatever the next holiday was. It's like, if it's October, you're pushing Thanksgiving. If it's Thanksgiving, you're pushing Christmas. And he says that kept getting earlier and earlier, and Linus just got 2 holidays ahead of himself because of all this. And the Great Pumpkin he's confusing Halloween with Christmas. And I'm like, that gimmick is so ahead of its time. It's absolutely brilliant. And that's where we are with Dark Horse doing their solicits. We're like 3 holidays ahead. So the great Dark Horse, Charlie Brown.
And the only reason I wanted to bring that up is because there's a chance that people might miss it, and I have to mention it now. They in Dark Horse's September solicitations, which are actually for October, they solicited the sequel to Kyle Stark's Where Monsters Lie.
Joe, do you see why I hate doing my pull list or my orders? Because just when I finally get a rhythm, you help me with it. Now, this is my all heat, no heaters. I get in there.
You want me to play it again, or?
No, I don't think you have it ready. So, but you see what I'm saying? It's like I get this, and now I have to figure out my months of what I'm ordering.
Yep.
I like when it was easier and new comic day was all on the same day. Oh, that's right. That'll be soon. So I don't know. Just keep it simple,
Yeah, I agree. But again, if your local comic shop helps you keep things simple, now would be the time to nominate your local retailer for Image's Select Retailer Award, which I guess they do quarterly now.
Oh, okay.
They give out a medal that you could wear. They give out a fancy variant, and I think this time around the fancy variant is of Ain't No Grave.
Yep.
And we'll include the link. And so the final day to vote is next Tuesday. And if you don't have a comic book shop in your area, or you don't have a good comic shop in your area, vote for ours.
Yeah, and hopefully they can get that Ain't No Grave variant, and I can have it.
It's only 5 questions. It's real easy. It asks you the name of the shop, their website, what city they're in. They ask you what are some of the things that they do, and they ask you to write a little thing about it. I just write that Max is there and is nice to me.
I'm going to write the same. I'm going to write when I fill out mine. I'm going to say, I think our comic shop should win this award because that medal's going to look really good hanging off Max's collar.
There you go.
Oh my God! Just that little Max strut across the shop with the medal. Oh my God!
It's a big medal though, so they might have to get a doggy size version of it too.
Oh, you know what? I'll get one engraved at the local PetSmart or whatever. Not a sponsor. I'll get one engraved to look just like it.
Perfect. So yeah, I'll include that in the show notes this week. Don't worry about it. And, vote for your shop or vote for our shop. Whatever, vote for our shop.
Ask not for whom the Rob trolls. The Rob trolls for thee. And now, the Rob Watch.
So Todd, he is back from vacation.
Well rested.
New podcast out this week, but I did not listen to the Rob's podcast this week.
Right. I figured there was no new, what do you call your thing? I forget.
Rob's recaps. Rolls right off the tongue.
Exactly.
And it was him talking about X-Force. It was him talking about the Superman movie set photos that leaked.
Mm-hmm.
And it was him talking about Italian comic book shops. Whatever. Right? So, I always mention, find out whoever your favorite creator is. If they're forward-thinking, they'll probably have some sort of email list, Substack, Ko-Fi, whatever, right?
Right.
They can go sign up for and get the latest and greatest stuff for. And, any creator that I'm even tangentially like. It's always good to be on their list. And one of them that I'm on is Chip Zdarsky's. Okay?
Right.
So this week, Chip put information up in regards to some of the stuff that he has going, mostly a lot of covers. Obviously Chip is very much known for his writing, but you forget that he's an artist as well, right?
Right.
And one of the things that he mentioned was, and I'll read this, this past month, the Krakoan age of X-Men comics ended. There were some truly amazing books that came out of this period, all kicked off by Mr. Jonathan Hickman and his big ideas back in 2019. Now, I, Chip, had almost nothing to do with this line of books. I worked on one miniseries, which wasn't even technically in the X office, but I was part of the famed X Slack group chat. Slack is like a group chat thing, right? and for a bit, and got to witness the camaraderie of the creative people involved, and it was almost heartwarming for this cold-blooded Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
So a couple years later, when it was revealed that Hickman would be stepping away from the book, myself, Chip, and Jerry Dugan wanted to do something special for him. So what they did was they submitted a cameo request to the Rob. Video for John, booked by his work pals, and the description is, our top salesperson is leaving his job to pursue his dream of writing and drawing his own comics. We know he loves you, the X-Men, Deadpool, and graphic design. He won't show us his comic, but we know he writes dense and complex stories. Any tips? So we're going to play the Rob's response. Now, right. I will say this. I think the Rob says a swear in here, but he speaks very fast, and I don't know if I catch it.
Okay.
Hey, John, it's Rob Liefeld, X-Force, Deadpool, Cable, Domino, all of it right here, my man, right here. And also right here in the palm of my hand. Look, dude, I understand that you are leaving your job to pursue your dream of writing and drawing your own comic book. That is super awesome. I commend you. Obviously, I've done very well in comics. I love comics. It's my passion. Here's the deal. Some tips, because I was just going over this with a friend today. There is a tried and true when you get down to doing a monthly comic. Stan Lee, Jim Shooter, one of the best editor-in-chiefs Marvel ever had, 787. What does that mean? Open your comics with 7 pages of your character using their power, introducing themselves to the reader, doing their cool whatever it is that they do. Then the middle 8 pages is where they go home, they have their school life, their work life, they're getting screwed over, whatever, subplots, character in action, the girlfriend, the wife. That's your middle 8. Then your last 787, that's a 22-page comic. That's the comics I grew up on. Those are the comics I made. The last 7 pages is the conflict. There's action, more using of the powers, and the villain making his move, and you end on a cliffhanger so that they come back next month. That is my tip to you, my friend. 787. Open with 7, showing the action. 8, do your character stuff. 7 pages of ending the action with the big cliffhanger. That's how I did it. That's what worked for me. Maybe show your coworker your comics when you're a little more, feeling good about it. But anyway, Rob Liefeld, wishing you the best. Good luck to you, Big John. Your work pals love you like you have no idea. Take care.
So, the rib of all this is that Rob hates Jonathan Hickman.
I did not know that part.
Yes.
Do you think he's going to take this well when he finds out?
No.
Okay, so we'll be doing a Rob watch next week, right?
I always joke, and obviously and sadly it's consuming more of my life, so it filters into these shows, like my Dabbleverse stuff with Cardiff and Tukey and all the other people like that, and it drips in, right?
Right.
And I've always mentioned that the Rob has very strong stuttering John energy.
Right.
And a lot of what John's podcast is these days is people paying him $2 a clip so that John reads insults about himself, his work, his family, and so forth.
Right.
And because John is hard up for money, he does it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say that they paid Rob, and Rob's a cameo from the Rob is a lot of money. So I'm not saying that they paid Rob $2 for this and, to play a rib on Rob. But a lot of this stuff with John started out of like, hey, I'm going to pay for a cameo of John and I'm going to put coded language in here where you're thanking Carl and Jenny and Cardiff and so on and so forth. But because you're kind of out of it a little bit, maybe just collecting a check and just reading the script sort of thing, right, that you're not realizing what you're doing. I'm not saying that's the beginning of this for the Rob. This could be an isolated incident. And the Rob sees it in all good fun, and we all move on with our lives.
Yeah, I don't think the Rob will be doing any cameos because he needs the money. I don't know, like he does them just because he likes the attention. The only thing I'll say that has nothing to do with this, he does a lot of quick hand gestures and clapping.
Yes.
That reminds me of a certain werewolf from Conan O'Brien skits. I don't know if you know
I do.
what I'm talking about, but he has that look to him that character had. And he's very energetic and bombastic. But I will say, we give props where props are due. I don't like to pump up the Rob, if you will. This was it the 787 or the 8? That's not. I mean, he learned that from Shooter. He learned that from Stanley. That's some good advice, man. That's not bad advice for an issue 1 of a comic.
Right, for an issue 1.
Mm-hmm.
But not every issue could be 787.
No, but he only had a 2-minute cameo. He can't tell him how. Like, listen, I would pay all the monies to have Rob just tell me how to write a year's worth of comics to make $1 billion. You know? So. What?
I was going to say, make a concept that somebody else makes better, and then you cash the checks off it.
Right.
No.
Copy and
but again, hopefully the Rob sees this all in good fun.
He
and
will.
7 years from now, you and I are not heading to Rochester for Rib the Rob-Con 2,
Oh my God. I would go though. That would be the road trip.
Okay.
Would he send people a foot in a box? Is that what he would do?
Goodness.
He would be like, here's a foot for you. You've been footed, whatever the phrasing would be.
I just saw that you could send somebody like a birthday potato or a celebratory potato. I wonder if there's like
that. I thought that was from Cardiff.
No, I'm going to say if I only had Cardiff's address in Minnesota, I'd send it to him.
Oh God,
but I might get one to bring to him at DowelCon. I don't know.
I hate that I know what you're talking about. I hate it.
It's just enough to sprinkle it in. Oh, what is this Joe's talking about?
Yeah, it's how things are done down at the factory.
That's right. So, hey, there's conventions this weekend. We'll have the links to this in the show notes. One nearby to us, Hershey Comic Book Con. I think this is probably the biggest one that they've done. Some of the biggest names that I've seen here. The aforementioned Jim Shooter that the Rob mentioned. Salvador LaRocca, who I don't think gets out much at all to conventions.
No.
Frank Thierry, who I haven't seen name has popped up on conventions in quite some time. Mark Schultz, adjacent to the area. Maybe you can hitch a ride down with him if you're in the greater northeastern Pennsylvania area. And Mark Waid is going to be there.
Yep. I would say if you meet Mark Schultz, ask them for some cigar boxes. Mark Waid, definite interesting guy to talk to. There's a 15% chance I might be at the Hershey Con.
Oh, really?
For the day, yeah.
Wait a second. Is this the weekend that Adam's going down to ride the roller coasters and not steal my season pass?
I don't know. I don't know anything about. I haven't talked to Adam since I stopped playing Grand Theft Auto. Occasionally we'll text, but neither here nor there. This is the weekend. I don't know if Adam's going to Hershey Park. That's news to me. But Josh and me were thinking about going down because Scott's the woman he's seeing lives down near there, and we were discussing like, hey, maybe if you're down there and we head down, we'll meet up, we'll get lunch, we'll get dinner. I don't know. As of the show going on right now, in a 3-person group chat, only 2 people are talking, so we'll see what happens if the 3rd person chimes in. So I may end up there, I may not. Who knows?
Cool. Man on the street stuff. It'll be exciting. Also this weekend in Council Bluffs, Iowa is OCon.
Okay.
Now, the only creator name that I recognized was Phil Hester. But I also saw that Michael Rooker is going to be there, a staple of conventions, who's been off the convention circuit for some time. The Honky Tonk Man is going to be there.
Okay.
And Linnea Quigley is going to be there.
Doesn't she have a workout video?
She does have a workout video.
Okay.
Don't get the Tubi version. Maybe get the YouTube version. Archive.org, Linnea Quigley, killer workout. Pencil off 45 minutes for yourself. yourself a nice beverage and enjoy.
Right. Even I understand the great works of Linnea Quigley.
Yes, and I'm sad that I missed when she was at Mahoning last year, and I don't know if she's on the slate this year. I'm real bad with keeping up on those sort of things. They did a gimmick this past weekend where Jeffrey Combs of Reanimator fame was there.
And not Family Feud, right?
Right. You're thinking of Ray Combs.
Right.
But Jeffrey Combs was there. I know that... Have you seen Reanimator?
Is that the one with the guy's head in a pan?
Yes.
And it's what movie? She was in another movie. The woman who was in Reanimator.
Barbara Crampton. She was in tons of stuff, tons of B-movie stuff.
There was another one where the guy had a pituitary thing and he could see...
Okay. So it's the same group because Jeffrey Combs is in that. Barbara Crampton's in that. Ken Forey's in that. That is From Beyond.
Joe, I have seen From Beyond way too many times. I remember my brother and friend renting From Beyond. And I've seen Reanimator because I think there's a bit where they kind of move his head towards the Crampton.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying what I remember.
Very, very famous. The cover, Dr. Herbert West, Jeffrey Combs working on, his potion, and you got the head in the pan on the desk, right?
Right.
So they, at the Mahoning Drive-In, built like a little set where you could get your mark photo with Jeffrey Combs.
Right.
And you could be the head in the pan on the table.
I thought he was going to be the head in the pan.
Now, there were a couple people where he was the head.
Right. I would pay for both. By the way, okay.
But what I'm saying is I missed out on the Linnea Quigley one, and if there is another one, I don't think she would be doing any of her past work recreations, but if she was, I'm moving some things on the schedule to get down there.
Right. I will say this. My nitpick with Reanimator, Joe,
yes,
is how can you talk if you don't have lungs?
What?
His head's cut off, right?
He's talking. It's very difficult to talk.
It should be impossible to talk.
Well,
he should be making no noise. He has no. Joe, do you know how your voice works? Do I have to get into the science? Do we have to shut this show down for 10 minutes while I explain how a person's voice works?
No.
Okay, but the long and the short of it is the lungs are a very important part of it.
I'll take your word for it.
That's my Joe nitpick of the day. Reanimator doesn't make any sense because of lungs.
That's the part that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Duly noted.
Mm-hmm.
So the links to these conventions will be in the show notes, along with information about soon-to-be-named-network.com, which doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately, but soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com does. Anytime any of the shows in the soon-to-be-named network go live, you can find information about them at their own individual websites through the podcatcher of your choice. Maybe they have YouTube pages. You can go subscribe to those. But the one-stop shop for all the shows is soon-to-be-named-network.tumblr.com. And, of course, that includes this show that you're listening to right now, Longbox Heroes, Longbox Heroes After Dark, Puzzle Warriors 3, Profane Arguments, Wings on Wings, which is on a bit of a hiatus. They did a best of last week, no show this week. They've earned their time. They don't need me to tell them that they've earned their time off. Final Wrestling Place, We Need Wrestling, At Odds with Wrestling, Porch Talk, which doesn't need time off. That needs to come back. It's nice outside. And since Ed has been on the Stink Sheet 3 weeks in a row, I'm considering the Stink Sheet part of the soon-to-be-named network now as well.
Right. All those people, Joe, some of them are part of the soon-to-be-named network group, if you know what I mean, that can make decisions. But anyway,
you could also check out some of our other friends in and around the internet and the stuff that they are up to. Mike Sterling's blog over at progressiveruin.com. Kevin Hellion's blog over at helionsteam.com. Congratulations, Declan, on getting out of the 5th grade. It only goes down from here. Rick Williams, The Chop Shop at freekaratechops.storenvy.com. Jason Sandberg's Jupiter is still available through the Indiegogo. Still selling copies of that over there a la carte. get the whole package from him, get all the accoutrements. Go buy Chris Runt's Battle Monsters, self-published digital comic or print copy. I did the Kickstarter. I got the print copy, but you got 99 cents kicking around. I'm sure he'll get a kick out of selling a digital copy through us. And our friend Davey from the band Cave People has his site, cavedomaincomics.com. He's got his self-published works up there, both in print and digital editions as well. Support some of our friends that are making comic books in the world of this that we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And they already got a plug earlier, but they'll get another plug here. If you don't have a good comic book store in your area, you don't have any comic book store in your area, let our comic book store be your comic book store. Comics on the Green. I got the Facebook page linked up here. That's where Dave and the crew let you know of when the books are in, if the books are going to be late. I was afraid by saying the books are going to be late that I jinxed the books being late, and luckily the books have not been late in quite some time. You can sign up for the mail order subscription service, get your books mailed to you weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, however it is you do. Or if you do sign up for any of those things, buy anything through their eBay store, whatever. If you do, there's a chance you can get a sketch on the package from our good friend Becky, who we're going to turn things over to now for My Walk Down Lois Lane.
Welcome back to my walk down Lois Lane. This week we're still going to talk about Superman, but we're going to discuss an issue of Action Comics. I admit I've never read any of the Action Comics from the 1960s, but a customer showed this to me, and it's real weird. This is issue 289 from 1962, so let's dive in. Linda Lee Danvers, who is secretly Supergirl, is watching a romantic movie on TV where the guy is heartbroken and single because he won't pick a girl, and she realizes that Superman is probably going to be a bachelor forever because he can't choose between Lois, or Lana, or Lori, or Lila, or Lisa. You get the idea. Supergirl tells her parents she's going to try to set up Superman with a girl. Her parents tell her men typically like to pick their own wives, but she's not going to listen. She goes to the Fortress of Solitude and uses a time-traveling logbook to travel back to ancient Troy. There she's looking for Helen of Troy, the most beautiful woman in all of history. Supergirl leaves a note for Superman to follow her and arrives at an arena to let Helen know she has a hot date that's not going to burn down cities in her name like all these other ancient men. When Superman arrives, Helen's boyfriend, using that term real loosely if you know anything about history, tries to have Superman attacked for having the audacity to date his future wife that he won in a duel. A huge fight breaks out, and Helen demands executions for this disturbance, causing Supergirl and Superman to flee back to 1962 because Helen's not so nice after all. Back in 1962, Supergirl is cleaning the Fortress of Solitude, and she notices a statue of Satin Girl from the Legion of Superheroes. She decides Satin Girl would probably make a better wife, and, because she doesn't want to have people executed in ancient arenas, and decides to hatch a scheme to set Superman up with her. She invites Superman to the Legion of Superheroes Christmas party in the distant future, when all of them are adults. The Legion give them gifts of Superman and Supergirl with their Kryptonian parents, which makes Superman grab Supergirl and drag her outside to get them a gift because this one was super thoughtful. They come back in with an anti-gravity meteor that they break into pieces and give each member of the Legion. If they give this meteor a command, they will be able to fly. It is the Legion flight ring before the Legion flight ring. Satin Girl, now Satin Woman, shows up, and Superman makes a comment about how she's grown into a spectacular beauty. Taking this hint, Supergirl uses mistletoe to make the two of them kiss. Supergirl thinks that he's probably going to fall madly in love with her, and her scheme is working, and Superman enjoyed that kiss so much he goes in for a second one. As he's kissing her a second time, Lightning Man yells out, "Don't overdo the Christmas spirit. Why are you kissing my wife twice?" And Superman realizes he's made a huge mistake. Him and Supergirl book it the heck out of there and return back to 1962. Supergirl confesses that she's been trying to set Superman up with a wife because she doesn't want him to be an unhappy bachelor. Superman tells her that if he ever was to marry, he would want to... You know what? I'm just going to read it. This is really what's in there. If I ever did marry, it would be to someone super unlovable like you, but we can't marry because we're cousins. Though cousins can marry in certain countries here on Earth, we are both from planet Krypton, where marriage of cousins is unlawful. That is a lot to unpack. Supergirl decides to search Superman's machines to see if there is a duplicate of her anywhere in the universe, and finds one on the planet Star-El. She tells Superman he should go there and see if it's true love with this duplicate of her. He goes and finds a planet with an orange sun and the exact clone of Supergirl. Keeping with the LL tradition, her name is, oh god, I'm going to butcher this, Luma Lanai. And the two of them hit it off right away. He brings her back to Earth, but unfortunately under our yellow sun, she suffers kryptonite-like sickness and she can't stay. Superman legit offers to ditch Earth for her, but she insists that the planet needs him and she leaves. Supergirl is upset that she's 0 for 3 in the love department, and Superman tells her that maybe fate has a purpose for foiling all these attempts to get him married. Supergirl agrees, and maybe his future is with Lois or Lana. She ends up going home and swearing off of setting up Superman ever again. So this is what's going on in Action Comics, huh? Okay. I honestly thought that Lois and Jimmy were probably the weirdest things of the Superman family, but I guess not. I guess Action Comics is really just stepping up the game. Maybe I'll cover some more of these sometime. Tune in next week for some more Lois.
Thank you very much, Becky. A little bit of a deviation there, of course, from Lois, but not to say that romance wasn't in the air for old Superman.
That's right. Putting the sin in cousin, Joe.
Oh, boy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Again, it was 1962. It was a different time, and I say judge away.
Exactly.
If the writers of issue 289 of Action Comics are not in jail currently, I think that issue might be grounds to put him in jail retroactively.
And I'll just say, when Supergirl's plan was to go into the future and talk to the Legion, and she ended up, Superman ended up macking on somebody's wife there, on Satin Girl there. I thought she could read minds, so you figured Satin Girl would have known what was up, but who knows, A lot of weird stuff going on in Action in that time.
Yeah, it feels like continuity might have been a little looser back in 1962,
Right.
I'll say this. If you are attending, and I say you, the royal you listening to the show, or you, Todd, listening to the show, if you do end up going to Hershey Comic-Con this weekend, I wonder if there was a Superman historian there that you could wax poetic about Action Comics 289 to.
Oh my God, that would be awesome! The one where Supergirl was trying to hook up with Superman. Yeah, that's the one. Hey, listen, if anybody would know, he knows Clark Kent's social security number.
Right.
He knows what's going on.
I'm sure. I would not doubt it if you went up to Mark Waid and said Action Comics 289, that he would know exactly what you were going to ask him about that issue.
I have no doubt that he would know, exactly.
Yes. So thank you, as always, Becky, for your continued trudge through some of these issues. Some gems. This one, I'm very sorry that you had to read this.
Right.
But I'm glad you did, and we just got to hear you talk about it. How about that?
That's right. I'm glad we got to enjoy you enjoying Action 289, Becky.
So let's get into what we read from this past week, Todd. Where would you like to begin?
I'm going to start with Uncle Scrooge and the Infinity Dime, written by Jason Aaron, with art by Paulo Martura, Francisco Di Polito, I don't know how to say these names, and Alessandro Passervocchio. I nailed it, right, Joe?
Yes.
Okay, so basically this starts off in an alternate Uncle Scrooge from the one everybody knows from the comics, where instead of in the famous Christmas story, Donald Duck doesn't make it with his nephews, so Scrooge doesn't learn how good it is to have family and instead focuses on his money. So that's where he kind of deviates from the regular Uncle Scrooge, and he just becomes richer and richer and richer. but more like distant and miserable. And he ends up finding, I believe it's called in his money vault, the Mirror of the Worlds. And he ends up realizing that there's multiverses, and he ends up finding someone else's number one dime, and he ends up thinking like, oh, I'll use the magic from these and become the richest duck in all the worlds. So he's going to go hunting down number one dimes. Of course, eventually he's going to get to the Scrooge everybody knows and loves, and he comes and steals that one. So he has to go to Gyro Gearloose to figure out what's going on. They put two and two together, how the multiverse works. And in the end, Scrooge ends up putting together a council of Scrooges to go get him from the multiverses. And I like what his secret weapon is that all Scrooges have in common. When the chips are down, they send in the angry people. And it's a fun book. But I'm not an Uncle Scrooge guy. So I feel like as this went on, there were a lot of Easter eggs and or in-jokes. Like, I feel like that in a past famous Carl Barks or Don Rosa Uncle Scrooge book, there is a Mirror of the Worlds. Maybe there isn't. I don't know. And, like, some of this other stuff is very in tune to, like, people who've read the book. But to me, I feel like I'm missing something because I'm not a Scrooge fan. But all in all, like, I like Jason Aaron. I like the art in it. You know, I like what's going on. It was a fun book. But this is my first Scrooge book, so I feel I'm missing something, if that makes any sense.
Now, I as you pointed out, I feel as though I could have been missing something.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel as though I got a very fun story here, even with my tertiary knowledge of Uncle Scrooge and so forth, which is just from DuckTales.
Right.
You know, and obviously you sounded a little bit more familiar with that story of Donald bringing the boys to meet Uncle Scrooge so that he learns about Christmas, which obviously is the impetus for we talked about it last week, the Disney Christmas Carol with Uncle Scrooge in it. And they reprint the original comic in this as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I liked the story that, like, where he get, you know, the one Uncle Scrooge gets the mirror and he goes through all the different worlds, the multiverses, and tying in Marvel, you know, and again, Marvel, let's say cinematic ideals of a multiverse into that of Uncle Scrooge. I thought that was very fun. It was very inspired. You get the little forward at the beginning in regards to Jason Aaron's kind of touch tone with Uncle Scrooge. And it's one of those things where, like, every, you know, we've talked before in the past where there was every writer has a Doctor Strange pitch, or every writer has a so-and-so's pitch, right?
Right.
I don't think there's a ton of writers that have an Uncle Scrooge pitch. And if they do have an Uncle Scrooge pitch, unless you're Jason Aaron, you're probably not getting it done.
Right. And like I said, there are gags in there. Like, I don't understand me. I like the book. I like the fact that he was kind of like, this is a gag. One gag I'll give away is like the one Scrooge that was getting all the dimes was the all Scrooge, and it was like the all. And it's like it's just playing on, like, all those gags were played on a lot of, like, Thor mythology and stuff like that. I found fun. I don't know why. I just, like I said, I feel like I missed something. I don't know if there's a famous Christmas story. I just feel that somewhere along the line, that's what changed Scrooge McDuck from a miserable, you know, curmudgeon to that. But so we'll see.
Right, but this was just light and fun, and it definitely felt like a Jason Aaron book. How about that too?
Yes.
But yeah, I enjoyed this. You know, obviously it's a little pricey.
Right.
You know, but I wanted to have a Jason Aaron Uncle Scrooge book in my collection, and now I do.
Right.
I guess this goes in my duck box.
Right.
Yeah. Another book that we read from this past week was Nightwing 115, written by Tom Taylor, with art by Bruno Redondo. This is part 2, kind of sort of part 3, but I'll say part 2 of the current story arc with Heartless making his big move toward Dick Grayson.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fire at the banquet right after Dick Grayson was accused of he and Alfred getting funds for all the work that they've done from Blockbuster. In the Ruckus, Nightwing and Bruce are purposely separated. Heartless's goons kidnap Dick Grayson. They find out that he's Nightwing, and then they frame him to be Heartless.
Right.
That's the story.
And
not much else happened. Like I said, what did I miss anything?
No. I was just waiting to see if there was, anything else.
No. So I liked it. I liked it a lot. Obviously, I mentioned last time that we talked about this, that this little run here kind of feels so much like the Chuck Dixon run. Mm-hmm. When Nightwing got his first solo book back in the late 90s, where you could probably grab the first 50 issues of that run, sit down, read them all in an afternoon, and literally, when I say afternoon, I mean 3 hours, read 50 comics.
Right.
They're light, they're breezy, they're fun, but you get a complete story, and that's what these feel like. And it takes me back to that time of reading that Nightwing book, and obviously it looks much better because of Bruno Redondo's art, not to take anything away from Scott McDaniel's art from back in the day, but I've been enjoying this storyline. But this is a middle story, big cliffhanger. And you get the bits with Dick Grayson, he has the Heartless gun, he's framed for a murder. Well, I can't let go of the gun because it has my fingerprints on it. He has the fear of heights and the fear of leaping and everything else like that, so he's a grounded hero. They have him on top of a building, so it's a very intense ending, and we had to talk about the ending, because that's a big part of the book, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'll say, I was just curious because I didn't know what your opinion was on the book at that. But my thing is, I'm with you on everything. The one part of the book that, I think is going to be super important is that we only get a couple pages here and there of the past couple issues, is the flashback to the first time he climbed at the circus and no one was around and he fell and he got hurt real bad. I feel that something with this memory is going to help cure him of his fear of heights, kind of a deal.
Okay.
And when they mention that, they're oh my God, we can't, as a traveling circus, we can't just stop. We have to keep going and eat. What are we going to do? And they're well, I know a guy who can fill in while they stay with the kid while he heals. And I feel that's going to be Boston Brand, the dead man.
Okay.
And that's why he's going to what's the name of the city that, the famous city, Nanda Parbat or whatever,
yes,
where dead man got his, that's where he went when he died and everything. I feel it's all coming together with that. And that's what I'm locked in on. I know he's going to defeat Heartless, but I feel there's going to be a cool dead man Nightwing crossover coming.
That would be a nice twist. That would be a nice turn of events, and I'm all for it.
Right.
So that's, again, it was going to be light. That's what we read from this past week. Let's get into what we're looking forward to coming out this week. If you head over to longboxheroes.com, every Tuesday around noon Eastern time, we put up the pull post, which is a link to all the books that are coming out this week, whether you get your books in print, whether you get them digitally, whether you get them sent to your home. However it is you get your books, be forewarned, be forearmed. Todd and I attempt to guess what the other is most looking forward to coming out this week. Todd is currently in the lead over me with one correct guess.
Right.
Let's see how the tree shakes this week.
Right. And I'm looking over your list. And is the book you are looking forward to most Absolute Power Ground Zero #1?
It is Absolute Power Ground Zero #1, which is also the book that I think you're most looking forward to coming out this week as well.
It is, and it's weird because Superman and Action Comics are finally wrapping up that Brainiac storyline.
Yes.
But I believe they're also an Absolute Power tie-in.
Yes.
So it's we're rolling out of one right into the other.
Right, and I was actually talking to Becky at the shop this past week, because a lot of books have been kind of, I don't want to say miss-shipping, but they hit that Wednesday list as they're going to be definite for the following week, and then Friday rolls around and they get moved.
Right.
And it's been happening with some indie books, and it's happened with a DC book here or there. But this is the first time that they purposely moved a big DC book like Action Comics to have the two Superman books that are both the finale or the last two chapters of the Brainiac stuff come out the same day as the kickoff of the big summer storyline.
Right.
So even though Absolute Power Ground Zero is the book I'm most looking forward to, I probably got to read Action Comics and Superman first so I don't get spoiled.
Yep, because it's weird. And I'm not sure which one. I'll have to look at the checklist to see which one I read first of the Superman and the Action. You know what I mean?
I'm almost 99% sure that it's Action then Superman.
Okay. And then, as you were saying, the list, as I was in the shop today, on the list right now is Justice Society of America for next week.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens comes Friday, if the list changes at all.
Mm-hmm.
So if it comes out next week, that'll be interesting. And when I wrote my email today with what books I was sending,
yes,
I typed, here's all my books. And then I typed this, Joe, I swear. And so you don't have to ask. I know Thanos is on your list, but I'm not getting it. And I was like, I'm just going to just delete that. And I sent my list, and then I get an email. No Thanos? And I'm like, nope, not. First of all, they're Infinity Stones in these books.
Oh,
and
boy.
Now they're people. I'm out, man. I'm out. Too far gone.
I like Thanos enough that anytime he gets a one-shot, he's not Doctor Doom, but, you know, right. for a non-Spider-Man villain, he's A-okay in my book.
But these are going to be, like, now are you going to get all the annuals that these are going to go forward in, that he's going to run through?
This could be the book that suckers me into getting them.
Okay, fair enough. That's the thing, because that's my, like, line in the sand is like, okay, they're going to be the annuals, so they're going to be more expensive, and then do I have to get the rest of them? And also, I'm just at, like, okay, Doctor Doom is, I like Doctor Doom, but, like, with Thanos, I feel like diminishing returns on his stories. It seems like nobody does much different with them. The only one who kind of did was Jim Starlin. When he ran his run all the way to the end where he, retired to be the farmer, and then he came back, he was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to try to be a good guy, but Thanos being a good guy is almost worse than him being a bad guy. It was like, okay, like, you're doing some interesting takes on him. And then if we're just going to rehash, he wants the gems. It's like, I'm done. I've seen this story. I'm done with this story, if that makes any sense. I've seen it 10 times already.
I felt as though, I know that you say Jim Starlin did some interesting stuff with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I really felt the more recent, I say more recent, like last 5 or 6 years, run with Jason Aaron into Donny Cates' run on Thanos was some pretty good comics as well.
I totally agree with you. And bridging that gap, I believe, was Jeff Lemire, who did some great stuff.
Yeah, okay. But
in all of those, he wasn't hunting down the Infinity Gems again.
Touché.
It was like, I'm like, that story we learned from Thanos, that, spoiler alert for Infinity Gauntlet, is he's his own worst enemy, and he can't win because he doesn't feel he should. So he's like, because they even in one of the issues that he like gets them all again, and they're like, "What are you gonna do?" And he's like, "I'm gonna give up." Like, I learned the last time I had these. It's not me. And I'm like, okay. And then like right around that, Brian Michael Bendis, where he was writing Avengers and Thanos showed up, and he was the Mad Titan again. I was like, oh, and I'm just after the gems, and I'm power mad with death. I'm like, okay, one trick pony now. I don't know if it makes any sense, but I have the Thanos comics for years that I love, and now it's on to new things. Should be a quick episode.
Fair enough.
But anyway.
So while you're over at longboxheroes.com, of course, be sure to check out past episodes of this show, past episodes of After Dark, and be sure to check up with what we're doing here in regards to Todd and Joe Have Issues, where we're rereading all of Gail Simone's Secret Six. We are currently on issue 9. Nicola Scott is back as penciler. This is a one-off issue. The whole team isn't here. I think they could have got away with calling this the Secret 3, but again, that's going to mess up my ordering of things. And this is a crossover with the DC event that was going on at the time, Battle for the Cowl.
Right.
And Todd, I know you're a big Grant Morrison guy.
Oh, biggest one here.
So it was after some Crisis-y event?
Final, I believe.
Okay, Final Crisis, where Bruce Wayne was presumed dead, but he was really just sent back in time, and he had to figure out a way to get through time to get back to our current day and whatever.
Right.
So there was a 3-issue miniseries that was going on, and it kind of crossed over into pretty much every DC book of Battle for the Cowl of who was going to be the new Batman. Spoiler, Dick Grayson. But we get tons and tons of great stuff in this issue.
Right, we do.
So we talk about this book, and I think we've done a good job, as good as a job as we can of selling it, okay?
Right.
I would argue to say that if I had to say give one issue of Secret Six to someone and get them to read the book, it'd be this one.
Okay, and I would like to touch one thing before we get to that on the crossover that was the Battle for the Cowl, where it touched all the books.
It touched a lot of books, but okay.
It didn't touch. It only touched Batman books. The only one that is kind of is Secret Six. Here's the main books: Batman Battle for the Cowl 1 through 3, A Battle for the Cowl, Commissioner Gordon, Gotham Gazette, Batman's Dead ? Azrael, a 3-issue mini, Oracle.
Azrael.
Yes, there's an. These are all one-shots that have Battle of the Cowl: Arkham Asylum, The Underground, Man-Bat, The Network, Batman Alive ? Batman 687, and Secret Six. Those are all the books that are the main books, and then the aftermath books are just other Bat books. Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ongoing Bat books that they tie into for a bunch of issues. None of the other mainstream books. It's weird that Secret Six is the only one that doesn't have, I guess Bane is your through line, but it doesn't really affect the other Batman books, if you get my meaning.
Yeah, I get it. I remember, obviously misremember it being a much bigger thing as a DC wide crossover as opposed to every Bat book plus Secret Six. But, that's kind of the mindset, and we are, as Secret Six comes out a couple years past Sinestro Corps War.
Exactly.
Where Sinestro Corps War is every Green Lantern book and Blue Beetle.
And it fit somehow.
Yeah. And I think this fits too.
Exactly. We'll get there when we get there. I'm sorry. I had that ready and I couldn't bring it up in time before we got going. Sorry.
All right. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a bunch of goons, of course, because Batman's gone. A bunch of goons have created an orchestrated attack to kidnap the children of some wealthy dowagers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Business people, it's not really important, okay?
Right.
But since it's 3 different families that were targeted, we get 3 different members of the Secret Six working together. And it's Bane, of course, Batman. It's Catman, of course, Batman has that analog there. And it's the boy/girl wonder, as named by themselves, Ragdoll, dressed as Robin.
How great is that look, Joe?
We've talked about this before on the show. DC Direct, McFarlane, whatever they are, I don't care what you call them. They're the DC toys. I want Secret Six toys. I want them to do from the Villains United issues where they have, here they are in their Arctic gear and here they are in their stealth gear as the variant repaints, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I want nothing more than a Ragdoll as Robin action figure.
I have goosebumps because we're on the same page, Joe.
And it needs to have either they did Spider-Man figures back in the day where they would be ball jointed, so the limbs would be all loose and wobbly, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how the ragdoll figure needs to be, or it needs to be a literal ragdoll, but an action doll, like action figure sized form, where like somehow there's like a thing that you could prop it up so it could stand, like a little stand or something, but also that it's all loosey-goosey like ragdoll themselves.
Right. See, I'm all for it because we've discussed, like, I'm with you. I almost want a box set of the Secret Six, but then I have to figure out whether we want Bane or Knockout. Do you know what I mean? So you have to kind of not do it that way. You have to do the regulars with all the variants. I would go broke with the Secret Six line alone. Like, as we're doing this and I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, this is a fun issue. Tie into the Battle for the Cowl, and then it hits that frame of them, and I'm like, I don't even have to write in my notes. Ragdoll Robin figure. I need one, you know? So, but.
Now I have to look to see what the release date of this was. Okay.
Right.
And that would be the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
On the cover, it's July 09, so that would probably be 2 months ahead. So,
okay.
May 09?
Okay, so the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie does not come out until 2014. Copy an A, get an A, inspiration, what have you. But there's so many bits in this issue, and obviously the Bane that we've seen in this is that this book has been set up as like Bane's redemption story. It's to make Bane a viable character in the DC universe, hero, villain, whatever. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously what we've seen him do in regards to the relationship that he's been attempting to develop with Scandal, but Scandal's not here in this issue. There's a bunch of spots in this issue where the way that Bane acts and his dialogue is proto-Drax in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
Okay. Where he takes things very literally. The way that he says things are definitely not meant to be funny, but it's we, the reader, see them. There's like, as they're breaking up the first kidnapping, Bane comes in, House of Fire, breaking people's spines. One of the guys says, please no, don't break my spine. Bane pauses for a moment and says, out of regard for the city this man belonged to, I will respect your wishes, and instead throws him out of a 20-story window.
Right. And the other one that I kind of like is where the guy says, like, hey, heroes, don't, make any moves. And Catman's like, heroes, you think he's talking about us? And Bane just says, the definition is extremely fluid. He could well be. And I'm like, I don't know if Bane is the straight man or the comedian in this, if that makes any sense.
Right. So that's the thing. Is Bane the straight man or the comedian? You can make the question of whether he is or is not, but then Ragdoll shows up and you've removed all doubt of who the comedian in this issue is.
Exactly. I'm not saying he is, but he's walking a thin line, Joe.
There's another bit where Catman goes to investigate something and hands the small child to Bane. Mm-hmm. Bane says, I don't know how to hold a child. Right. Softly starts singing Rockabye Baby to it. The child begins to cry, and then Bane freaks out, saying that he thinks he may have broken the child.
Right.
Again, very Drax in the movies 5 years before it happens, Right.
But in the same way as he's doing all this, they're doing the parallel where Blake and Bane are talking to each other, and they're both accusing the other of wanting to take up the mantle, the cowl, for it. And there's a lot of great bits in this from that. And then when they're at one of the other houses, they save the child, and the father comes in, and he's looking at these, and he thinks they're the monsters, and he ends up coming at Bane, and he's like, oh, you saved my kid, I'll give you anything you want, I'm a rich man. And he's like, well, if you don't want anything, it's like, how about I just need to know the name of the man who saved my daughter? And he's just like, the Batman saved your child. So not only are they like pretending that each of them wants the cowl, the other one wants the cowl. This is a love letter to Batman from Bane, like of respect. You know what I mean? He's like, I'm doing this because in his mind he was a great man. This is my salute to him in my brain somehow, if that makes any sense.
Right, and then we get the bit where they're on the third family, and Nightwing shows up, and Nightwing kind of looks down his nose at him, and that ends up just irking Catman for that very reason. Of like, yeah, okay, maybe our methods are not the same, but you don't have to be so snotty about it, you know?
Right.
You know, so that like those are those two characters' arcs, Catman and Bane. You know, the fun in this issue is all ragdoll. We do get a bit as a nod to the 60s Batman TV show where they're rappelling down the building.
Right.
That is framed, and and again, I can only imagine Nicole and Scott watching that scene and just like, I need to recreate this with these three characters. Does a perfect job of it, and as they're getting away, and where this becomes the recurring gag through the back half of the issue, is that Ragdoll says, "To my bat pole," and Catman says, "Everything that you say sounds dirty," and then the rest of the issue is just as they're on the mission, Ragdoll saying a lot of things, specifically involving food, and addressing how dirty it sounds coming out of their mouth.
Yep, he's definitely testing that theory throughout this book. And I will say Nightwing showing up, Joe. I cannot pinpoint it, but I do believe that this is where all the Dick Grayson Nightwing butt shot, like love of, from Nicola Scott and Gail Simone come from. I'm not saying there was one before it, but that panel, like, I think that lives in infamy, and they took that and ran with it in a good way, if you know what I mean. I don't know. I'll have to do some research to see if there's any Nicola Scott, Gail Simone reverse shots of Nightwing in the past before this.
This one definitely popped out at me.
Yep.
And I had the same thought as you. Is this the panel that launched 1,000 ships?
Yep.
Or I have to think there may have been one or two before this, but this, as I mentioned at the top of the show, like the title Amazing Spider-Man, this is the one, I would have to say.
Yeah.
The other ones were just like maybe, you know, not to channel my inner ragdoll, but maybe the previous ones were dinghies or schooners that went out
right
as a warning to say, hey, everyone get ready. Here comes Nightwing's butt. And then here it is.
Right. I will say they may have been there, and this is the one where all the fans got on that ship.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, we missed the first 3 boats, but there'll be another one in 10 minutes.
Right. Well, this, like, those were smaller boats. This was a cruise liner.
Yep. Yeah. But immediately, that's where my brain went.
And because there's so much of this sort of stuff in here, and yes, it's not really steeped in what the Secret Six is really into. Like, okay, yes, there's the 3 families and they take the mission or whatever it is. That's why I say that this is the most, like, no frills attached, most bang for your buck solo issue of Secret Six. Give it to someone, read this. If you don't like this, you're not going to like what came before and what's going to come after.
Right. It doesn't have all the members, but it definitely has the feel.
Yes, absolutely. So next week we'll be talking about issue 10, unless you had something else.
Nope, I'm all in. I'm done.
For sure. So this is the beginning of a new story arc. We got the 6 at full strength. We got Gail. We got Nicola. I'm excited to read more. So one of the things that I most look forward to every week, getting a chance to revisit all of this stuff, you know?
I mean, I say it all the time. I forgot how good this book was, man.
So that being said, let's over at the website, I'm looking at my notes. Sometimes I get tied up. Okay, we have TV talk. That ends the show. But longboxheroes.com, head over to our store. I got shirts, I got pins, I got stickers. I'll sell them to you. Shoot me a message. We'll talk. Right. No TeePublic sale going on this week, but we got the eBay affiliate link. As always, this page contains affiliate links for eBay. We may receive a small commission on purchases you make. You could use the affiliate link at any time you want to buy anything from eBay and support the show at the same time.
Yeah.
But the best and most fun way to support us is to sign up for the Patreon. Patreon.com/Longbox Heroes. For as little as $1 a month, you're going to get 2 bonus shows from Todd and myself every month. One is Previewing the Past, where we look at 30 years ago this month's previews catalog. Also, we have Comic Book Oddities, where we look at some of the lesser-known, much more maligned, some pre-Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff, but maybe stuff that fell through the cracks, maybe you didn't know even happened. Like this month's offering, which is Dylan Dog, Dead of Night, starring Brandon Routh. He's been in superhero stuff before. This is one that didn't do so well, and we kind of analyze maybe why it didn't do so well.
Right. Or how they could have done it better, at least. Yeah,
definitely how they could have done it better. Or, they had a framework there, and maybe this wasn't the best way to get that out to the masses. But anyway, $5 a month is going to get you those 2 bonus shows 2 weeks before everyone else. It's also going to get you Longbox Heroes After Dark 2 days before everyone else, so that you can listen to the shows in the correct listening order. No matter what level that you sign up for at, you're also going to get the full scans of those previews catalogs that we talk about on Previewing the Past. High quality, expertly done scans of those full catalogs. And we might have some more accompanying materials coming up in the near future for some of the other Patreon shows that we have over there.
Right.
And of course, there's the $100 tier. Whatever you want to do with that, that's up to you. So let's get into TV talk.
Sure.
Let's get into, how about we start with the Acolyte, huh?
Fair enough.
I feel as though we could talk about the Acolyte similarly to how we talked about Nightwing 15.
Right.
Everyone is headed to Kofar, where the Wookiee Jedi is.
Right.
Master Poe is his name?
Saul.
Master Saul convinces Osha that she's needed on this mission. I don't think he has it with good intentions. Osha is concerned about confronting May. May is having issues with the mission that she's tasked with, which is defeating a Wookiee Jedi through non-violent means. She gives up on her plan, but she gets there and sees that somebody has already run the Wookiee Jedi through, and it turns out to be her master. The entire episode is built up that this master is all-powerful, all-knowing, all-everything. We get a big standoff with a bunch of the Jedis and the Masters. Cut to black. I think we only have 1 more episode left of this, maybe 2 more episodes left of this.
We have the one that dropped today, which would be 5,
right,
as we record, which we don't have a chance to watch. So then after that, there are 3 more. We're on episode.
Wow.
Episode 5. It's an 8-episode run. So
see, this episode felt like this is like the go home show, right?
Yeah, because it kind of ends with the evil Jedi showing up and just being like, bam, knocking everybody down with a force push, and that's the end of it. I don't know. I didn't feel like it was the go home episode. I just felt like big things should happen. And the only other thing was there was supposed to be the fight between the evil Jedi that runs the Wookiee through. And there's supposed to be that fight, but they said for budgetary reasons it doesn't happen. I think that's BS. I figured something weird happened there. I don't know. I feel like we may see the fight later on. And
like how they flash back to May and Osha's origin. Like maybe that's how they're going to break things up with.
Right.
Okay.
Because and I'm just jumping to another show really quick. In the last couple episodes of Game of Thrones that ever were, one of the main characters has this wolf. And he's like, all right, I'm going off to the fight. My friends, take this wolf where you're going to live and take care of him. If I don't come back, like, he's yours. And they're like, okay. And he just lets him go. And everybody online goes, that sucked. Why didn't that main character, like, pet the wolf one more time or have an interaction? It's, like, off screen. And the creators go, we didn't have the money in the budget because it's a CGI wolf. And I'm like, this show makes billions of dollars. Like, what are you doing? So in the end, this main character survives and ends up having the meeting with the wolf again. And they, like, have that playful scene. And then they come back and they say, well, we didn't want to tell you that the payoff was that. later on. So I feel like that fight, there's something important about that fight, and I'm way overthinking this, is that we're going to see it, but they don't want to say in episode 7 it's all going to make sense, you know? So they say budgetary reasons for the show that has a budget of $20 million an episode.
Yeah, I you make a good point. I could definitely see them revisiting, going backwards with some of the stuff in some of the future episodes. I do want to mention, though, we were in this episode introduced to Basil the Tracker.
Right.
Which reminded me that in the first episode that when we talked about the Acolyte, I had it in my notes, and we did not spend 15 minutes talking about Pip the droid.
Right, because I just called him the Swiss Army droid, and we're good to go.
Oh, my goodness. I thought he was, like, such a great... Like, he is the ultimate droid. Because he's tiny. You could do a toy of him that would be the same size as that he exists.
Right.
And like he's a fun droid, you know?
I still say the best droid in all of Star Wars is the stairs droid from Andor. The one that pulls up to the hover bus. So good.
Okay.
Like, I want a whole mini around the stair droid. Give it to me.
I want at least an episode just focusing on Pip.
Fair enough. But like I said, he's a Swiss Army droid. And I think it's cool because I think they do like making the droids smaller and smaller so they could sell, like you said, actual size. Like when in Obi-Wan, when Leia had the little droid that she could fit in her pocket.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised we didn't see more of those. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
But if you could make the Pip droid actually have tools in it so you could like fix things, that is going to sell like gangbusters, man.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't buy them, but, you know, they should be doing a better job of marketing, you know, Star Wars stuff. So that's all I got for Acolyte. Like I said, I really thought that this was the second to last episode, but here we are, you know?
Right. So that leaves Doctor Who.
Correct. Doctor Who season finale. I'm going to let you take point on this because this is one that April and I watched together. So I didn't get a chance to take copious notes on this one.
Were you before we start? Were you guys very confused on stuff at all, or no?
No, I did pick up after the fact. You know, obviously that there was a lot of nods to the past of Doctor Who stuff, and I feel as though with what we were given in this season, that enough of the stuff paid off to be satisfying enough, and obviously much more rewarding to a dyed-in-the-wool scarf, pun intended, Doctor Who fan.
We'll get there, and I'll let you know how I feel about this whole episode when we get to the end. So basically, as we were, Sutek is taking control of, you know, a couple of people, and he released his dust of death, Joe. So, you know, that's the thing where he's killing all the people, and the Doctor and Mel make a run for it on their Vespa, and they kind of get out of there. Ruby's hanging out in the time window where the doctor told her to go with the this kind of the see-through TARDIS that's still, you know, hanging out there. And then everybody starts dying. And when they killed Kate, the head of unit, I almost rioted. And then when I realized they were killing everybody, spoiler alert, I was like, everybody's coming back. So I'm not going to lose my mind. I understand how Doctor Who works. But one of the cooler ones was when they're with Ruby's grandmother, and Mrs. Flood is with her, and she's like talking to her, and she kind of gets that evil like look in her eye, and she tells her, you know, I didn't think it was going to end like this, but tell your maker I will come to storm down his gates of gold and seize his kingdom in my true name. I had such plans. And then they end up dissolving, and I'm like, God, I want to know what's going on with Mrs. Flood. So the Doctor and Mel get back to Ruby in the time window, and they end up going there, and he ends up grabbing like one of the monitors that did everything, and on it starts running the Fourth Doctor stuff. Joe, you have no idea how hard I popped just even seeing that little bit of it, it was fantastic to see him and Sarah Jane. And he kind of explains what, Sutek was. And it might be throughout the episode, but he ends up explaining throughout it that he met him once. He was the greatest foe he ever fought. And he sent him through a time vortex into the future to, he couldn't get out and he was eventually going to die. So Sutek shows up, and I love the visual of him clinging to the TARDIS like Scrooge with his money bin. He's just like, this is mine now, and he's like spinning it and wherever he moves, because he had become fused with it, because when the doctor sent him into the vortex to die, he ended up grabbing onto the TARDIS and becoming like one with it. But he doesn't want to kill him because he's kind of curious about something. And we end up finding out that he wants to know the secret of Ruby even more than everybody else does. So they're like, okay, we got to run. And he tells Ruby to concentrate on the see-through TARDIS in the time window, and it becomes real. And they go up, and it's inside, and they go in. It's a smaller version. It's the memory TARDIS, because if time is memory, memory is time. And in it is everything that every doctor has ever had, but in a confined space.
Now, I want to interrupt there. At first, because remember when we met the Rogue and his ship was so messy?
Right.
I thought this was a nod to that.
Right.
But obviously not in realizing how deep this is all going to go, Right.
Now, it's never mentioned in the episode, but to shoot off on the memory TARDIS, I go shoot on the memory TARDIS. In England, they're running old Doctor Who stories, and since if they're 4 episodes, 6 episodes, they're cutting off on the last episode and on the next episode stuff. They're getting rid of all that. They're smushing them all together, so they flow as one movie, and then they have a prologue and an epilogue with the memory TARDIS, where they're bringing old companions in that are still alive, and old whoever we could sign a check to and bring them in, and they're going to narrate the beginning of the episode and narrate the end of the episode. They're going to be like, oh, do you remember, it's good to see you again, and blah, blah, blah. Do you remember that time? And they go, and it all happens, but none of them can figure out where this memory TARDIS came from. So I didn't watch all the episodes, but I watched the epilogue and the prologues because they were fun. They were characters that I liked. I was like, I don't know where this is. So this ends up being that thing, and it's still out there because, spoiler alert, throughout the episode, it disappears. We lose it. So it's still there, and they're going to do these things from now time to time and get whoever they can. And I'll say, Joe, seeing all the stuff in it and seeing it was one of my favorite things of all time, is looking in and just catching all the Easter eggs that I could sit here and list for 20 minutes that you wouldn't understand. But it was so, so fun to me, and was like, oh, this is so nostalgic, and I absolutely love it. So they end up going off, and this memory TARDIS is falling apart. The doctor ends up using that intelligent rope, like the intelligent gloves from the first episode that he meets Ruby, and he ties it all together. And they realize that the whole world is dying, and that Sutek, when he was attached to the TARDIS, ended up sending every planet they landed on. He would create a Susan twist, and now that person's on the planet, and they're using the dust of death to kill all that, and it's webbing to all the universe. The doctor realizes, I've killed the universe, and I do like him screaming out of the TARDIS as he watches the universe fade out. That was a powerful thing. So he's like, I promise that I'm going to figure this out, and he ends up going to find any survivors. He finds a woman, and I like the bit where he's talking with her, and she's talking about how it's affecting everybody in the real world, where she's like, yeah, it's even going down, my baby has passed away because it's affecting people and then traveling back through their timeline to get everybody. And we don't understand things anymore. It's even killing facts. And he's like, oh, well, do you have any metal? She's like, yes, with this spoon, I could save the universe because it's very rare. And through that, it's a reality thing. He could figure it out. And the screen that he had starts going back to being interacting with Ruby to her questions, and she ends up finding out that all this somehow could be helped by what was the name of the guy? I have it written down and I lost it. He was the prime minister, Roger Ap Gwilliam.
Yes.
So, and he ends up talking about how when they created the woman, there was like a 73 yards thing with the TARDIS, the field around it, and they start like they kind of hint and answer some of the questions throughout the series, and he's still around. The doctor says, well, I was around when, I brought him down the original time. Do you remember him? And she's like, no, I never kind of heard of him, even though she met him in 73 yards. And he ends up saying, well, the doctor, that he did this mass DNA thing in 43, and if your mother was alive, she would have been tested and we'll be able to figure out who she is, and maybe we can kind of stop Sutekh with this. And we start to realize that Sutekh and Watt can spy on them because he could spy through any dead things. The dead cells on Mel is starting to affect her, and I thought that was a cool bit. So they kind of land in the year where the prime minister was ousted. And before they leave, he ends up, gathering up some stuff. He finds a whistle. I wonder if he'll use that. They go find the DNA thing. They do the test. He tells Mel to watch the door. But she ends up being possessed, who finally got some good stuff to work with, to act. I like when she was getting possessed and after the possession, because everything they gave to her in the classic era was drivel. So she gets to shine. She ends up teleporting them back to Sutekh, and they kind of end up, he's going to kill the doctor. She says, I have the information, but she destroys it. And the doctor uses the whistle to activate the TARDIS, which he's done other ways with snapping and stuff like that. And he ends up throwing out Sutekh's assistants, and ends up getting in and using that intelligent rope to bind him to the TARDIS, and ends up dragging him through the time vortex. And he ends up killing him. And he says, if you kill death, what does that do? Kill death. It kills death and gives us life, kind of a bit. And everybody comes back. Happy ending. This is where the episode should end, Joe, because we end up finding out who Ruby's mother is, and she's just nobody.
She's just a lady.
She's just an ordinary person. There are no nobodies in Doctor Who. Everybody's special for being ordinary. She goes, but I don't get it. And this is the part where I don't think we have all the information, and the episode falls apart for me. Because she's like, oh, we gave her power just because we thought she was powerful, and that's how it works. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't. If you just think somebody's powerful, it gives their daughter the ability to make snow. And he kind of goes, okay. So they go find her, they bring her back, and Ruby's enamored with her, and they're like, oh, well, we found her father too. The doctor's like, all right, you're gonna stay. You're going to stay, and I'm going to go, and, you go figure out your parents and do that. And he kind of leaves, and I'm just left empty with that ending, and I don't feel it's finished, if that makes any sense.
Right. So, obviously, and I'll say this, you having a much more breadth of knowledge of the source material going all the way back, as long as it is, you explaining what happened in the episode makes me feel as though I missed so much.
Right. So I guess I don't know.
Right. It doesn't change my enjoyment of the episode, but it definitely is okay, if you were a Doctor Who person, then this was the show for you. When Ruby's mom showed up, as you mentioned, nobody in Doctor Who is nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, when Ruby decides not to go off with the Doctor, my wife was very upset, because over these last couple episodes, she's really enjoyed the camaraderie and the relationship between the Doctor and Ruby, and to see Ruby stay and not continue on these adventures with this iteration of the Doctor, she was upset. And I said, well, we don't get another episode until the Christmas episode, 6 months from now. She was even more upset, and I'm in the same thing with you. Because Ruby's mom was, again, a nobody, and that the ending of this felt like not an ending, I felt as though I'm okay because we're still going to get more of these characters. It's just going to be a while.
I'm going to put money on that Ruby comes back.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And we're just kind of like, that's kind of just anybody who hasn't watched, it's kind of like the swerve for people. It's going to happen. But if she didn't, it's because the money wasn't right or she got a better, like that's the way Doctor Who runs. Like I said, when they brought in the young boy to be the science advisor for Unit on the whatever, the thing that he was riding, they had the woman in the wheelchair before. And like I said, she couldn't make it because she got another gig. So they just, if she got another gig and she's like, I can make more money here for now, they will replace her in a heartbeat. So that could be the reason, but I also feel she's going to come back, and I would put money on it. So we'll see. So tell your wife there's still hope, but that's not the end of the episode. At the end of the episode, Mrs. Flood, once again, looking down the barrel of the camera, acknowledging us, the fan, a la my favorite writer, Grant Morrison in Animal Man. She says, like, all stories have endings, kind of, and Ruby gets her happy ending with her parents, which I think that she kind of even says, like, here she gets her happy ending. But I think there's more story, and she says there's always more story. Are you wondering how the Doctor's story turns out? Well, the Doctor's story ends up in absolute terror. And she's like in a weird, like, white bushy outfit with like a parasol and everything, holding luggage. So I think she's hitting the bricks. And it's like, okay, the Doctor will be back in Christmas. And I'm like, okay, I love the episode up to Ruby's mom. I think that was a swerve. The Flood stuff after that has me enamored, and I'm waiting for the Christmas episode, but 6 months is a long time, Joe.
6 months is a long time, yes.
But I'll be okay. And then I don't know when season 2 will be after Christmas.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get the announcement either at that or close to it.
Right. It'll either come out shortly before it, or, as always, when the episodes end, they will be like, and it won't give you a date. They will always see Doctor Who will be back spring of 2024. They always give you a vague, thing. So, but I'm glad you at least enjoyed it. My thing, like I said, seeing all the stuff and knowing a lot of the stuff, a lot of the stuff I absolutely was just like, this was for me. But with Russell T Davies' Season Enders, it's maybe like it's my least favorite of his, but that's still saying like a triple for me, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like Walking Dead episodes back in the day. So,
sure.
All right, I'm done babbling now. You want to go on to the boys?
Yeah. So, my wife and I watched the first 3 seasons of The Boys, right? Mm-hmm. Kid was a little bit younger, go to bed, maybe not paying attention. He's a little bit more aware these days. He's going to be 13, right?
Right.
And we had some time today, and, I'm like, oh, okay, well, we're going to watch them. I'm going to rewatch this season eventually with my wife, and she's been kind of like, I don't know if we could watch this with Asa, like being cognizant of what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. After watching this week's episode, absolutely not.
What? Why?
Why? Well, again, in a show that constantly is raising the stakes, this episode, I think, throws everything in there.
Right.
We get, so, I would say that a big, because like there's an A story, there's a B story, and there's everybody doing their whatevers, right? Mm-hmm. A story, B story, C story, and everything kind of like factors into each other. Let's say like the B story of this is the Starlighter firecracker stuff.
Right.
She goes from having a podcast to having a 6-hour show on Vought News Network.
Right.
And they set up the recording of the live show right across the street from the Starlighter Foundation.
That was a brilliant, like, up yours move, man.
And I liked how we get to see how it looks on TV. And then we get to see how shoddy it looks in like just the magic of TV in a TV show that's about, whatever, right?
It's the fakeness of Vought and its people, man.
Yes.
And I will say this, if you want to see something great, they have the full... the boys' Twitter is my favorite thing because they show you stuff that's not in the show. They have the full MTV Love Lifts You Up video between Firecracker and the Deep. The whole thing. Like, you get 30 seconds in the episode. It is a 4-minute from beginning to end video, and it's so cringy good. It's awesome, Joe.
And I know you say it, like, it's on their social media, but it's also on their YouTube page as well. Right,
everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember, whatever the episode was from the first 3 that we got, that was the 7 on Ice.
Yes.
Right?
And they have
the YouTube page had, like, all the bits that were in the episode put together extended.
Right.
So the song that Queen Maeve sings about Christmas, that we get a little bit in the show, we get the full version of the song on the YouTube channel, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So obviously as that's going on, that's upsetting Starlighter. Starlighter makes the deal with the guy who's going to be the president-elect. That's going to have... and again, I feel so bad. Sometimes I forget some of the ancillary but equally important people names. They call her the head popper.
Right, she's the vice president now.
Right, the vice president. So Starlighter goes and makes a deal with him that, like, listen, you need to get this bill through because if you get this bill through, it will cut Vought off at the knees. I will essentially do anything that you need me to do. I'll put the costume back on, whatever it is to get more people to vote to get this bill to go through. Okay? But things don't plan out that well for Starlighter because and again, we talked about this before. This is one of the things that I hate in a show like this. And at this point, Starlight has been with these people as long as she has been, the relationships that she's cultivated with them. Butcher shows up, and in a much cleaner way, or in a much filthier way that I'm about to say, asks Starlight why she has such a vendetta against Firecracker. Or why Firecracker has the vendetta against her.
Right, and she lies.
And she lies. Stop lying to your friends. In a show like this, we're 4 seasons in, stop lying to your friends. Stop keeping secrets. I know you don't trust each other. Maybe you've given each other good reasons not to trust each other. We understand why. And so then, conversely, on the flip side, we get the bit where we find out with Frenchie and the new guy that he's with, that Frenchie is the one who killed his parents and sister when he was working for the Russian mob. The new boyfriend, tells Frenchie the story. We get the reveal, like, I never saw him, but I recognize the weird scar on his ankle.
Right. When he pulls up the covers, to hide, like you think that should be cliche, and I was like, did he see his ankle? You know what I mean?
So we think that stuff is cliche. We get the reveal where Frenchie gets beaten up trying to break into Firecracker's trailer outside where they're filming her show. The dude is nursing Frenchie back to health, and it's at this point where Frenchie is like, I have to tell him. And he's honest, and the guy freaks out, and rightfully so, and starts beating the crap out of Frenchie, and rightfully so. And again, that teaches you in the show that maybe don't be honest.
Right.
But there's a different relationship between Frenchie and this guy than there is with the rest of the boys. They've been through 4 seasons of this stuff by now. 3.5 seasons, whatever it is, right?
Right. But with Frenchie and his boyfriend, he did him wrong. He hurt him beyond belief.
Yes.
And the boyfriend says, but I can't kill you. I cannot kill you, but don't come around me again because I might. I will. He lets him go. Someone who has hurt him in ways that are unimaginable. That's one of the 2 choices you could have when someone hurts you as a kid. Maybe somebody else has a different way, but we'll get to that. So I do like a certain parallels that they're running in this episode that are way smarter than should be for the Boys, the TV show, if that makes any sense.
Right.
But then you have like the subplot with what's his name? Who's his father? Huey. His father is in the thing, and he's going to die, and he's with the mother. And so he goes to A-Train and says, "Get me some V, and we'll end up being
we'll be square,
and we're done." And so he goes, "We're square. All right, I'll do it." And he goes. A-Train goes and gets the V, and he gets found out by Ashley, and I think Ashley has the upper hand over A-Train because she sees him stealing V, but A-Train has that Ashley gave the Homelander an upper decker in his toilet. So I'm like,
Now I will say, it's not the first cabinet that A-Train comes upon.
No, it wasn't.
The first one is where Homelander has the jar of the gray hair.
Right.
Then there's the other cabinet that's just containers of milk.
Mm-hmm.
Distressing. And then he finds the compound V.
Yes.
And they say, so, and this is one of those things as an audience member.
Right.
A-Train says to Huey, Homelander has all the compound V locked up.
Mm-hmm.
And Huey says, well, if he has all of it, he won't miss one vial missing.
Sure he won't.
And Todd, you and I know Homelander knows everything. You can't get anything by him. And the fact that these people continue to try to get one over on Homelander.
Mm-hmm.
If only there was something that they could see that happened in this episode to really hammer that point home, that not only can you not get anything by Homelander, but that Homelander never forgets.
Right. Also, I call that drawer Homelander's Howard Hughes drawer.
Oh, boy.
Which is where he's keeping his stuff in there. But, yeah, and he ends up going back to Huey and giving him the compound V. And I like A-Train goes, he's like, all right, here's your compound V, but we're never going to be square. We're never going to be square. I know it. And he ends up forgiving him because of various things that go out through the episode. And like his mom, he's like, I'm tired of hate. He's like, I'm tired of hate. And he ends up legit like shaking A-Train's hand. And I was actually shocked by that scene because I thought he was going to, be the dirt.
Yeah, because Huey even says, he's like, you know what? I was ready to come here and just tell you, no, we'll never be done.
Yeah.
But thank you. We're done.
And Huey's the only one. Huey's the only one who's learned throughout these episodes to not lie. Do you know what I mean? Like he's coming around, even to A-Train, like where everybody else is lying. He lied when he was taking the compound V and stuff like that. But it's like, okay, he's telling his teammates the truth, and even now one of his semi-enemies. So that's why I still say, to me, Huey's the only good person in all of the boys.
And we did get the bit where, obviously he brought Kamiko with him for cover, and they run afoul of the Shining Light folks.
Right.
And we get the bit with the girl that Kamiko recognized previously. And then we get a little bit of her origin as to why she has the hatred toward Kamiko. Mm-hmm. And obviously, so you get that crisis there for her.
Yep. So even Kamiko's like, you put me in a pit and fought me. Like, so Kamiko's losing a bit of the rub too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because you felt bad for her because she was mistreated, but now she was mistreating others. So like, there's a lot of gray in these places,
Right.
So,
now, okay, so I want to wrap up, I want to wrap up the Huey stuff, but we got to come back to Butcher.
Right.
So Huey has the compound V. He goes to the father, who they took him off the ventilator, and he's literally got days to live. And Huey makes the decision not to put the compound V in his IV.
Right. And like, we'll get back to it because Butcher basically says compound V makes nothing better, So, and he does it and he goes away. And I say, anytime you're somewhere, always check your pocket after you put something in there. Now, Joe, let me ask you a question. Because obviously Butcher's been seeing his wife because he took the Compound V.
Well, wait, we have to wrap up the Huey thing.
Let me finish, though. It's coming back to Huey. But Butcher sees his wife.
Yeah.
Do you think Huey's mom is real?
Yes, because other people are interacting with her.
Okay, fair enough. I was thinking maybe because people were online saying, "Do you think she's?"
I get why people are thinking that, because there's the theory. Obviously we know Butcher seeing the wife. We are being led to believe that maybe
Egan,
whatever the character Negan plays is also imaginary. But the fact that there's actual paperwork that was signed over that the mother has power of attorney and can make the decisions over Huey.
Okay.
I don't think that she's imaginary.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah. Because somehow the Compound V ends up getting into the thing and Huey didn't do it. And it certainly seems as though the mother somehow had it.
Right. So, and Simon Pegg wakes up. Doesn't he wake up?
Yes.
And that ends his storyline there.
Right, so that ends that all stuff there. Obviously, Butcher, we get the bit where the episode starts and we see like something crawling around inside of him.
Under his skin.
Yeah.
And in one of the things that bothered me, in all the history of Boys, the Boys TV show, one of the things that bothered me the most was him passing out and hitting his head on the faucet in the bathtub. Because... like, I'm not going to have my face lasered off or run into by a guy at super speed, but there's a good chance I'm going to get dizzy and hit my head in the shower. And it just, I don't know why it bothered me, Joe.
Well, I'm more of a slip and fall than a dizzy in the shower sort of person, but I get you.
Right. Well, your pumper's better than mine, so.
Yeah, but my knees and ankles and equilibrium ain't better than nobody's.
Right. But anyway, I just wanted to get that out because it really did.
Anyway, so there's something crawling around in Butcher, cause him to slip and fall, and then we see a bit later where the celebrity preacher that is part of Firecracker's show has stretchy abilities.
Yeah, he's Ezekiel's Mr. Fantastic.
Okay. So he ends up getting the drop on Frenchie, and that's how Frenchie gets all banged up earlier in the episode. Butcher comes in, uses the fire extinguisher on him, frees off one of the arms, but he still has another arm. He's still able to get one over on Butcher. And then as Butcher is being strangled to death, we see that thing that's inside Butcher underneath his skin moving around, start moving up closer to his brain. Then all of a sudden everything goes black, and that guy is missed. And I don't mean that we missed him MISSED. I mean, he is turned into a red MIST mist. And Butcher has no idea how it happened.
Yep.
And you know what Butcher should have did?
What?
Told his friends about it.
Right. Do you think, because he ends up saying to Huey, like, I have enough, like when they're in the alleyway and Butcher sees Huey get the Compound V from A-Train, he says, there's a lot of Compound V here. There's enough for both of you. I can give some to my father, and I can give some to you, and maybe it'll cure your cancer or whatever. And he's like, I already got some, and I used it, and I think it's speeding things up. You know what I mean? So did the Compound V give him that slug under his, I'm calling this, whatever's moving under him, and did that, or there's a part of me that thinks the Homelander's kid is watching him, and he ends up saving him. And it's just another swerve that we think Butcher's got powers. But the kid's like, I'm watching out for you. So, because Mom would have wanted me to.
Right, because we get the bit where Butcher is talking to Mother's Milk and says, listen, I think things are speeding up for me. When I'm done, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to take care of the kid. Right. That's the only reason I'm doing all this. If I don't get a chance to complete my mission, you have to do it for me.
Right. My time is short. So
yeah. We have to wrap up the Starlight. firecracker thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they end up in Firecracker's, her trailer. They have incriminating photos of her when she was at Bible camp. She was 28, and maybe he was younger than 28.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing I have in my notes is that Butcher's with me because he called it Twitter.
Right.
And I'm glad that they call it Twitter in the show. They don't call it like V Twitter or something, right?
Right. Or X. They should have called it X.
Mm-hmm. Or V. Or they just call it V. Well, everything's V. But anyway.
It should have been Vitter. It should have been Vitter.
No.
Yes.
So he's like, oh, we're going to blackmail you with this. And she goes and reaches over and sends out the tweet herself.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, let's see and find out, right? But she didn't say it quite like that. So it goes out. It doesn't get a ton of traction, but she goes out live on the show and gets ahead of it and turns it around that this was a crisis of faith moment, that God put that not 28-year-old boy in front of her to test her, and that made her stronger. So that ends up backfiring on them.
Right.
And then Firecracker still has her trump card in her back pocket, which is Starlight's medical records, that in between seasons 3 and 4, Starlight went and got an abortion.
Yes.
Which doesn't paint things in the way that the audience that Firecracker is speaking to, doesn't paint things well in what Firecracker or Starlight has been preaching. Being reformed, and of course with her upbringing and everything, it essentially destroys her life that gets out there publicly. Starlight loses it and goes out on live camera and just goes and pounds the snot out of Firecracker.
Yes, thereby making sure that the thing the president want passed will not pass.
Yeah.
And kind of like, and she has a meltdown. Couple of things on this, because this was one of my favorite parts of the storyline, is the hypocrisy with Firecracker and her people. When the whole season has been about their trafficking kids out of the basement of Starlight Foundation, and everybody wants to like murder people in there, like the cultists, and she comes out and admits it, and they're all like, "Oh, well, you've seen the error of your like, oh my God," like that made me almost have an aneurysm. Like, even though it's fake, like I was like, "Oh my God, I hate hypocrisy." So that's fantastic. Then Starlight goes to Huey, and I legitimately thought they were going to do the most cliche thing in the history of the thing, that she didn't tell Huey what had happened. You know what I mean?
And that's how he found out. Sure.
Yes, he finds out on live TV, and that breaks them up and blah blah blah. But it was like a caring moment, and she's like, "Yeah, I wasn't ready." He's like, "I understood," and I'm like, because that just seems like the pat way it could have gone. You know what I mean? And I was absolutely floored and shocked when they didn't, because I thought it was the easiest thing to do in all of it. And I was like, okay, I actually like that you didn't make her out to be the evil person to Huey, if that makes any sense.
Right. They were able to make this moment that everyone else in the show sees as this traumatic incident, a way to kind of strengthen their relationship to us, the viewer.
Exactly. I didn't know how to put it, but yeah. That's everything, right? Is that everything?
Well, no. So there's two more things, actually. One, obviously, all this is being manipulated by Sage.
Yeah.
And we get the moment where the Deep is like, hey, we had a good time the other night. Why don't we go to Flavortown and get some fried pickles, right? Which I think might be a euphemism for something, but I'm not really sure. We don't have a Flavortown around here. She kind of rebuffs his advances, and he's more confused than he usually is because he's not the brightest guy in the world. Later in the episode, she kind of explains what was hinted at last time. So while the rest of her, and again, I think this may have been a little bit telegraphed for how they're going to have to deal with Sage.
Oh, yeah.
In the fact that, she is the smartest person in the world, and most people's brain stops growing when they're 25 or whatever it is, but her brain has never and will never stop growing. So she could temporarily lobotomize herself, so that she can kind of turn everything off for a little bit and kind of enjoy the simpler things in life, like the deep. And even though last episode I assumed that she lobotomized herself, this episode they set it up to have the deep lobotomize her. And based on this scene alone, I don't think April can watch this season of The Boys.
I was just going to ask if she had watched this episode yet, because the only thing would have been worse if it wasn't the deep and it was baby ghosts doing it to Sister Sage. But once again, the VOT International X handle, I'm sorry, Twitter, I'll do it for you.
Stop it.
They have a tweet that they put out 9 hours ago as we record this. This month, Vought A Burger is taking you to Flavortown to honor the new member of the Seven, introducing Sister Sage's Genius Onions. So good you'll want to poke your eyes out. And then there's a picture of Sister Sage with the bloomin' onions, and it has a thing across the front, like a banner that says E equals MC Delicious. I love the bot Twitter, man.
The laziness of it is what makes it.
Well, that's the whole point, is because it's and I almost cursed here, so you're going to have to edit. Like a crappy, empty suit who's behind marketing is doing all this. And it's perfect. It's just cringy enough to make it awesome, Joe.
Yes. So. And now, I guess we have to talk about, what would be the A story?
Yeah,
we sure talked a lot about the boys here, right? We really enjoy the show.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we had talked last week on how there was the stories going out that this is the lowest rated Rotten Tomatoes, whatever, blah 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 blah. And I don't typically look at these sort of things, but they appeared on my timeline. Things have turned around with this episode, and I definitely have to think that it's all the Homelander stuff that happens in this episode.
Right. This segment of Longbox Heroes brought to you by Carvel's Fudgy the Whale.
I went to Carvel today, and I was gonna get a Fudgy the Whale that said "Home Sweet Home" on it. For the bit,
because he goes back to where he was in the lab as a kid. He brings the Fudgy the Whale cake to them, the Carvel cake. Do you think there's going to be an uptick in sales for Fudgy the Whale?
Oh, I would certainly think so.
Yeah, I do too. Get in there before it melts. Oh, my God.
I'm shocked that there hasn't been a sponsored tweet for it already.
Oh, but do you think Carvel wants to distance themselves, or do you think the answer to all your questions is money?
Yes.
Okay.
So, so Homelander, he goes back to where it all began, as you mentioned, and he goes to visit some of the old crew, just for some camaraderie, catching up on some old times, asking where Barb is, telling stories about when he was younger, shooting some paper basketball.
Yep.
Just having some fun.
That's right. John goes back to his lab.
What? You don't call him John.
Oh, I'm sorry, Homelander. Sorry. Joe, oh my God, I was when he comes in and he brings the cake, we're not even to what happened. I was I had my stomach dropped when the elevator was coming down. He walks out with the Carvel cake and he tells her, I was this is not going to end well. And it just in increments of 1 to 2 to 3 as it amped up. When the guy made the mistake of calling him John, and he answers Homeland, and you could see the disdain on Homelander's face, and it happened. Joe, I would have remembered the first time. You tell me that you are yes, sir, Homelander. Oh, so cringy.
So I'll say this: maybe I'm an idiot. Mm-hmm. Okay, but for a little bit there, I thought, you know what? Maybe Homelander's intentions are good. Maybe he's here just to kind of figure some stuff out.
Right.
And then we didn't get a chance to really talk about it. We had so much to talk about it from last week with all of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I think that we forgot to talk about last week was the twitch.
The shattered mirror?
No. Homelander's always had like a little bit of a tick as he's trying to hold back what's inside. And he's not doing a great job of it this season. It's real noticeable that he's having a real tough time of holding everything in.
Right.
And he's constantly got tweaks and twitches and little spasms. And once I saw that first one when he was down there, I'm like, oh, they're all dead. I thought he was going to be able to hold it together. I really did. That's on me, guys. I'm sorry.
Okay. Are you doing a bit?
No. I
really thought he was going to. Oh, okay. So that's why I thought you were bringing up the mirror. The mirror from last episode, because he smashes it, and in it are, like, at least on my take, and I think I'm a pretty intelligent guy, is he sees all, like, there's 4 cracks, so he sees 4, I think it's 4 Homelanders, I might be wrong, and the one is like, and the main the psycho Homelander's like, you have to, like, what your problem is you still have some humanity left. And you have to kill the humanity. And, like, that showed to me the sad one. And I feel like he's going to kill off all those Homelanders in the cracked mirrors except for the psycho. So when he said that, he goes, and the psycho one goes, you have to go home. And I was like, go home to kill your humanity. There's only one way to kill your humanity. Like, just murder everybody who did you wrong there. At least that was my take on it. And I think he does a pretty good job of it.
Oh, boy.
Puts the guy in the oven, which was a
right.
rush.
And again, you know, he was the one who hit the button. And even though, like, you know, it didn't burn his skin, it still hurt, you know. Right. And it was best of 3 on the paper basketball. And, you know, and like all of it was just so ominous, and that was one of those scenes that was like horror movie cinematic.
Yes.
That as I'm watching that alone in my office with headphones on, I imagine what that scene would have been like in a theater packed with people.
Right.
And just
gasping.
To hear the gasps and then like feel the tension in the room with like 100 other people, or how many people fit in a theater these days. And Homelander's like, you know what, why don't you go in there and watch me make this shot, like how I used to be in there, and watch you make this shot.
And go ahead.
I can't believe Homelander missed that last shot. I really thought he was. Now this I'm doing a bit. I thought he was.
No. You're funny. The bit where he puts him in there and he's like, Homelander, I'm sorry. And the brilliance of this TV show is I should never feel bad for Homelander. Do you know what I mean? But when he goes, now you're sorry, and puts him in. And I'm worried because, you know, they show another person who was wrong to him, and we'll get to that. But I'm worried that, like, the people who already have the wrong idea are going to get the falling down thing, or the Joker mentality from the Joker movie, that he's the wronged one because, like, you're like, oh, well, he had a bad childhood. That's why he's a maniac. But it comes back to Frenchie. That kid had a bad childhood, but he didn't kill Frenchie. You know what I mean? Like, the nuance is going to be lost on a lot of people.
Well, and again, we'll get there, but we come to when Barb shows up at the end.
Right.
But Barb essentially says, like, you could have left at any time.
Mm-hmm. We couldn't have stopped you.
Right. We could, if you wanted to leave, you could have. There's nothing we could have done then, just like there's nothing we could do now.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you stayed was because you wanted us to approve of what you were doing.
You wanted love.
Right. But anyway.
Right. And the other scientist who nicknamed him Squirt, I'm going to gently walk around this. When he made him do what he made him do, and Homelander was on the chair watching him.
With the running commentary.
Yes. And laughing, I went, forget Booster Gold. You found your new Joker. Like, I was like, you know, as I just made fun of the people who look up to Joker, I I was like horrified. I was like, I could see him, like the cackle and the laugh and the psycho look in his eye. I'm like, get him on the Penguin tomorrow before you do some reshoots, man.
I want him just to be Homelander.
No, I know.
I don't want him to be Homelander and someone else.
No. He's going to be Booster Gold anyway, but
no. They're going to go younger. He's too old to be Booster Gold.
Right. Now, because he has Barb, and Barb was saying this and that, and he goes, and he tells her, let's go up to my office. She's like, no. He's like, no, let's go in the bad room. You want to know why I call it the bad room? And she lays all that out. You could have left whenever you want. And he basically welded her in there and murdered everybody else in the lab, and like left her to die in there. And this is why this is the nuance of the show that I love. When Homelander shows up with the Fudgy the Whale, he goes, there's so-and-so, there's so-and-so, and there's so-and-so. And I see a bunch of new faces. If I could almost give you, if he comes down there and he murders everybody who done him wrong, but didn't kill all, like, because he says, I've never met any of you, new faces.
And let the new people go, yeah.
Exactly. Then you could say there's a hint of, like, goodness in Homelander. All right, I can argue with you. But when he murders all the innocents, there's, like, anybody who says Homelander had a rough, childhood, this is why. You go, then why did he murder the people who didn't do him wrong? I could see just getting the revenge out. And him going up the elevator covered in blood, Joe, was topped carry the movie. And I don't need no cape work in this. The blood on the back of him, and then his face, just that smug look on his face. I'm like, this is only going to get worse from here.
And it's not that it was just blood, Todd.
It was sinew and brain matter.
It was chunks, Todd.
Oh, so good. I hope Barb gets out.
I hope somebody finds her. I hope she's going to be okay.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so either. That
was a great episode of The Boys. The first three, I thought, had all good scenes that you could have cobbled an amazing episode together. The weakest for start of any Boys season, but this amped it up to, I'm like, I don't even care. We're here, and I'm ready for the rest of the ride.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I like the show The Boys, Joe.
Yeah, I really like the show. We've talked about it forever here. Yep. It was a great way to end the show and say thank you, everyone. This was episode 716 of Longbox Heroes. For Todd, this is Joe saying, we'll see y'all here next week.
Remember, be a faucet, not a drain.
You're listening to the soon-to-be-named network, the Lamborghini of podcast networks.
The Rob is a Longbox hero. The Rob is a Longbox hero. He gives us five stars.